Okay, right, so we're going to have a go at creating a picture of a badger, and we're going to be doing this in oil pastels, which are quite a tricky medium, but a good one to get to grips with. Okay, we're going to need, so the oil pastels, a bit of A4 paper or card. I prefer card myself just because it's a bit more sturdy, and then a pencil to do some initial outlining. Okay, first things first, we're going to slightly reduce the area that we're working within on our bit of paper or card. So I'm just going to do a bit of a border, and we then won't worry about going beyond that border with our details. So it just means we don't need to go all the way to the edge with the colour, which simplifies things a little bit. Makes life a bit easier, which is generally a good thing. Okay. Right, we now need to think whereabouts in this picture we're going to have the badger, and I think we'll have it fairly central, so I'm just going to do a little bit of a guiding line down the middle. And I use the pencil more than anything to do lots of guiding lines. And once I've done the guiding lines, then I'll use it to slightly more clearly define the outline that I've chosen, but to begin with, it's just a lot of guiding shapes and lines. Okay, so and that we're going to think about what sort of size we'd like to have the badger's head, and I think just doing a very rough circle, very light. I'm only barely pressing with the pencil, so just about like that. And I often sort of go around many times just slightly refining where I'd like it to be, so maybe slightly lower. Okay, and then the back of the badger's going to come up and out of the picture there. I think that will work about right. Okay, right, so now they're at this stage, we're going to press slightly harder with the pencil. So the side of the badger comes out here as well. Right, slightly harder with the pencil. So let's go to the top of the head, and we're going to do just a bit of a curve over the top centre of the circle that we've done. Down to the sides a little way to sort of around there. Okay, we're going to start with our central stripe. So we've got our centre line as a bit of a guiding line, but that's just very light. It's just to guide us. So I'm going to come this side of it first, down quite a way initially, and do the same that side. So we're going to be, the badger's going to be looking straight at us. So ultimately, whatever we do on one side of this line, we do on the other. So we've got symmetry. Okay, so around there actually come out slightly, so just a little bit cut out. And then down. Still trying to stay symmetrical either side of that line. To around there. This is going to be the central white stripe down the badger's head. Okay, we'll leave that stripe there for now, I think. Okay, so I'm going to come out on this side first, and then we're going to do a bit of a guiding outline of the ear on this side. So this comes out, and we'll come back to roughly where the circle curves round to for that ear. And then I'm going to do a cut in and down. And when it comes to it, that bit's going to be dark and that bit's going to be light. So I can do a quick bit of shading just to remind myself that that's going to be the case when it comes to the oil pastels. Okay, we'll do basically the same on this side. So up, and down a little way, and then cut down to basically the curve of that circle. Something like that. Okay, and do the same. In and along. Shade that to remind myself that that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so let's come back to this side. And this is now the edge of the darker eye stripe. I'm going to cut in quite, sort of coming so thicker at the top, and we're going to come quite thin down towards the end here. And actually around here, I'm going to do just a circle initially, Again, just very lightly, very loosely, and this is roughly where the eyes are going to go, so press really lightly with the pencil and curve around that for the stripe, and in and down. Okay, and the stripe ends there, where it become the nose. Okay, we'll try and do the same on this side, so initially around there, down towards the eye, and we'll curve slightly around where the eye is, and then down there. Okay, that's about right for that. Okay, let's come out from the base of that stripe, and we're going to come down at an angle, a sort of diagonal, do the same across there, diagonal, and curve around at about that level, so slightly up from the base of the circle. Okay, make that a little bit wider. This is where initially doing light lines with the pencil is good, because then you can make the deciding lines darker, and we'll do that at the end. Okay, so doing the nose now, so the nose just sort of takes up the lower part of that area there. Just do that quite loosely for now. Okay, I'm going to do a bit, so follow that same line from the snout and up the side. Similar over here. Doesn't have to be exactly symmetrical, but just pretty similar. Okay, and then from there we're going to head out quite straight and slightly up. We'll do a similar thing over here, but maybe head out a bit less far. Okay, that's good. Out and up. Right, let's come back up towards the ear. I'm going to cut out there, so some longer hairs, sort of very tufty hairs under the ear. So I'm going to do a few more sort of tufty type lines with the pencil. Come round that line that I've just done, and then start to head out at that kind of angle. Okay, we'll come over here. So it's good to just switch back and forth when we're doing something front on. Come around that one, and we'll start to head out. Okay, let's finish off this line of the badger down here. So coming kind of straight down, but doing some more tufty hairs at different angles, and then probably down to around there. That's fine, because we're going to have vegetation lower down. Okay, right, so over here, let's get a bit of a line of what will be essentially the front of the body. Okay, and then there'll be lines coming out from the badger, different lines of hair. This is coming at angles back towards the very back of the badger. Let's come a little bit higher up there. Define that back. Okay, that's its back. Right, okay, let's just outline the eyes. So this is a tricky part. I'm just going to do a line going across, straight across, very light. And that will help me figure out where to do the eye each side. So that's another guiding line. And so, yeah, when you're drawing something, you've got two kinds of lines. I think you've got the guiding lines, which help you to figure out where things are. And then you've got the more defined lines, which are your sort of confirmation of the outline of what you're drawing. So that is a guiding line. Okay, so I'm going to do, to begin with, just a smaller oval, but slightly tilted down. Can you see that? And same over here, slightly tilted down. Okay, now I'm going to just define that a bit more clearly. And actually it's going to be, so it's going to be tilted down, and it's going to be a little bit pointed at both top and bottom. Let's do that. So tilted and a little bit pointed at top and bottom. Okay, that's about right. I'm just going to define for myself the top of each eye, where the eye shine will be, and what we'll be attempting to do with the oil pastels, although it's pretty tricky because they're very blunt, is to leave that bit there and that bit there pure white if we possibly can. Okay, that's pretty much it for our defining lines. Let's just confirm them a bit more. So let's go along the back, and then we'll confirm these, all the lines that are actually the outline of the badger. So not that, for example, not the circles around the eyes. Those are guiding lines rather than defining lines. Got quite big noses. We're sort of filling quite a bit of that area down here with the nose. Okay. If you're smudging a little bit, don't worry. We're going to be covering over a lot of this with the oil pastel, and it's worth remembering this is just a bit of a sketch as well. You don't have to worry about it going in the Tate Gallery or anything. Okay, let's just show along there that the direction of the hairs goes in towards the stripes. Okay, and then our ears. So yeah, just doing a little bit of roughing of those edges to show the direction that the hairs go in. Okay, and then out here. Yeah, so down the side here the hairs change direction a little bit. Okay, we're pretty much there with this initial outline. It's going to do a couple of lines over the tops of the eyes. So those bits will be really light as well. They have quite big maybe rims to the eye or rings around the eye. So I'm just going to define those. And then this little area in front, that's going to be quite light as well. So I'll just do more of a kind of guiding line there. Top of the nose. So the bottom of the nose will be darker than the top. Cool. That's good for the badger. So we're going to have some vegetation. Let's just do, more than anything, some guiding lines. We're going to have some vegetation out to the right. So just do some nice arcs of what would look like grass, but actually we're going to make these bluebells, I think. That will look particularly nice. A few in front of the badger, so just do a few different directions of line there, and then a few out to this side as well. So let's just do a few directions of line out there as well. Okay, that will do it for our outline. We're going to move in now and do the background first, and then we'll do... Okay, we're going to start with some flower heads. So I'm going to pick out a darker blue and a lighter blue. Okay, let's start with the darker blue. So let's start out here, and we're going to do, it'll be bluebells. So just do some, press quite hard, and some essentially blobs with that darker blue. And coming out at a range of different angles. So maybe starting pointing up, and then they slowly head down. And that's kind of how bluebells are. They've got the top one points a bit more up, and the next one's a bit more pointing down, and then eventually they point right down like that. Okay, we'll do some here. So maybe we'll do a few just pointing a bit more down. They're just hanging down in front there. one more down here. Okay, let's head over, do just a couple here. So maybe, yeah, a few more pointing down, and then the same kind of thing on this side. And these can be pretty rough, because I think in our image it will be almost as if the background and the surrounds are slightly blurred, and it's only the badger itself that's really clearly in focus. So yeah, don't worry too much about the exact detail in these. Okay, that will do for the darker blue. So let's move to the lighter blue, and I'm going to just do a few more in the lighter blue, just to add a little bit of variety, and then we'll be using it in the background as well. So I'm just doing a few bits kind of in between where I've done the darker ones. And I guess it's almost as though on these bluebells the light is shining a bit more brightly, or maybe shining through them. It just adds a bit of variety. Okay, we're going to do a few in the background, so just do a few, well, yeah, blobs, anywhere you please really, with this lighter blue. And do little clusters of them, because of course these are still clusters of flowers, flower heads of the bluebells. On this side of the badger, we'll cluster there, and a final cluster down there. Right, I think that's fine for those. Okay, we're going to go in to begin with some darker green. So I'm going to use a green about this kind of darkness. Whatever darkness of green you've got is fine. Now we're going to start, before we do that actually, if you need to at any point, use a bit of paper towel or something which you can rest your hand on, and that will limit how much you end up smearing and yeah, smudging the oil pastels. Right, we're just going to come along the back of the badger with this dark green to start with, just to really clearly define that, and come along, so all the way around the top of the badger that we've outlined, but above rather than coming down into it. So don't come down into the badger, just define that line above. And you can do little jaggedy lines if you like. You could do more straight lines. Make a little bit jaggedy, looks good, looks natural. Okay, coming down in, and then all the way down this side. This is the outline where the badger's outline meets the background. Okay, that's good. Right, so above that line, we're going to just do a sort of circling motion with the dark green, slightly up into the background. So I'd say go fully around the flowers that you've done. Yeah, well, don't go over them, and leave plenty of white space around them. And it's mostly just down along the badger's back itself that we're doing the darkest green. So that circular motion with the oil pastel is quite a good way to get sort of a blurred effect, and also a good way just to get the pastel to go onto the paper. So I'm not going over the badger at all. Can you see I'm being quite careful to just go around the outline? And yeah, just being quite random with where I put this dark green. But yeah, so darkest close to the badger, and then little bits tailing off beyond that. And leaving the bluebells with some white around them at this stage. Okay, properly down for the top there. Okay, out to the right hand side, so same thing, come nice and deep and dark in towards the badger, and we'll get, so that will give us some nice contrast. Right, I'll do a little bit darker green up into that space there, because that's quite a big space. And then I'll otherwise come down. And yeah, so where we're coming to these more foreground bluebells, we'll just tail off with the dark green, because we're going to do a different sort of motion down there. Okay, just come along that side of the badger. Okay, that will do for that. Right, so in front of the badger we're going to do more full strokes with, just going to check that that's on screen, yep, with the pastel. So at a range of different directions coming up towards the flower heads. So yeah, come down to your picture's edge where we've defined the outline, the border, and at a range of different angles come up towards your flower heads. And we can do a few more lower down because that's going to be more in shadow, so just that lower part, we can get that a little bit darker. Okay, so here I think we've got some slightly more horizontal angles, so a bit more like that for a few of these front ones, and then they become more vertical again as we head out to the side here. Again, a range of different angles. Away, cutting up into a few, and then all the way down to the edge of our picture. And again, a bit darker just at the base, so we'll just get a few more lines in at the base of those stems. Right, that will do for the dark green. We're going to switch now to a much lighter green, so something like this, if you've got something like that. Okay, let's start with these lower ones. So I'm going to come up out of the dark green that I've done and all the way more fully to the flower heads, and maybe even slightly beyond in a few cases. And don't worry if you go slightly over your flower heads. Obviously this whole scene there'll be a lot of layering of, you know, blades in front of flowers and flowers in front of blades, so yeah, it really doesn't matter. But yeah, get a decent amount of that lighter green going over your dark green. And especially filling in those lower gaps. And over to here. So yeah, I'm going to try my best to not go over the flower heads with this light green if I can. But if I do, in a few cases, that doesn't matter. Just creating an overall impression. And even you can, at the very tops, leave some bits white. So that will be sort of the brightest highlights, where the light's really shining down brightly. So I'm leaving quite a bit white there, actually, and I think that will work quite well. Okay, and then more of the green coming down into these stems down here. Okay, that's good for the foreground. Now let's move to the background, and we're going to do that same circular motion up from the dark green and slightly more up and around our flowers. But you can still leave some bits white, especially as we get towards the very top of the picture. I'd say leave quite a bit white, and that will just look like there's some really bright highlights in the vegetation behind the badger. But yeah, come properly down into the dark green above the badger there. And then otherwise little circlings around the flowers. Yeah. And go around the flowers as best you can. And then otherwise do leave plenty of it white. So it's very difficult with oil pastel. Once you've gone over the white of the paper, it's very difficult to get the white back. So there is the white oil pastel, but actually it pretty much ends up being quite smeary. We will use it for a bit of the detail in the badger, but the best way to have really bright white is to just leave the white of the paper. Okay, last few bits over here, but I'm going to leave plenty white as well. And go over that dark green there. Down into that. So you can see that the background, you could quite reasonably describe it as messy, but we've also created an impression of a bluebell woods, a bluebell scene, which is basically what we're after with this oil pastel. Creating a bit of an impression of something. Okay, cool. I think that's all good for the badger. Right, we're going to do a bit of initial detail in the badger with the black. Now, if your black is quite blunt, like at that end, what I'd suggest is rubbing it sort of straight down onto a bit of card or paper to try and get the edge nice and sharp again, like that. Can you see? Nicely sort of straight down at the end. And that means you'll be able to get slightly better detail with that black. And I'd say it's most important with the black and the white to have that sharper edge so you can get slightly more defined lines. Okay. Right, we're going to start, while we've got this decent edge with the black, we're going to start by outlining the eyes, because that's where we need the clearest outline. Even still, as you can quite imagine, and as you will experience, it's quite difficult to get a really clear edge with the oil pastel. So I'm just going to go real slow and look really closely at what I'm doing. Okay, and I'm going to just fill that in up to the highlight, but not over the highlight. Okay, right, I reckon that will do. It's just too risky to try and do any more with oil pastel, because it's so difficult to get those clear outlines. So I'll just go over the top slightly more. Okay, yeah, right, moving over to the left, I'll try and do the same. Good luck with this part because it really is tricky to use the oil pastels to do fine details. Oil pastels are very good for doing slightly rougher things like our background, but really tricky for doing detail, but I'm sure you guys will do a great job. Okay, so I've left that highlight and I'm just gonna shade in below. Okay, I think that will do. Right, I'm going to do the wider outline to the eye. So do you remember we did that? So I'm going to do that ring above and the ring below. Same over here. Ring above, ring below. Okay. Rightio. Okay, let's come down and use this more defined edge to do the nose as well. And come in from both sides, down and under. And actually for now we're just going to block the whole thing in with black, and then we'll do a highlight on it with white afterwards. So this is a place where actually a bit of layering of the pastels is going to work well for us. Okay, something like that. I've left a bit free up there and that's fine. Okay, so next I'm going to come in and under the snout and underneath these bits here to the side. Right, so in this whole area underneath here, I'm going to start by just doing some hairs headed out that way, but this whole area is going to be really quite dark. It's both in shadow and dark haired anyhow. My hair's coming slightly down as we head down. Okay, right, I'm going to try and fill in, but going around, so quite loosely go around these flowers. Okay, and then just fill that in otherwise. Just go for it. And carefully under the snout. To that side. Okay. That's pretty good. Right. Okay, so the darkness does come further out, but I'm going to make the lines a little bit more spaced apart out here to this side. So we're out to there, that line that we've done coming down. So yeah, make them a bit more spaced out. Come under there. And do your lines at a range of different angles, because that looks a bit more natural than doing all of them at exactly the same angle. Okay, we are going to be layering this bit up with a couple of other colours, but for now that's about right. Okay, and we're going to do the same coming out this side, so just make the lines a little bit more spaced apart. Okay, and down into the flowers there a little bit. Right, okay, let's come over to the back of the badger, and we're going to just do a few more sets of kind of layers of hair coming up along its back and up towards the head. So there's one, I'm going to give it a space and then do another layer, set of lines coming out, and these hairs are heading back along the back, so it's good to do your motions in line with the direction of the hairs themselves. You see I'm leaving little gaps between and then doing the hairs heading back. And they can be thin or a bit thicker, it doesn't matter too much. Okay, that's good. Leaving a little bit of lightness along the top, and then we'll be using some other oil pastel colours to come into those hairs a little bit. Right, let's head up towards the ears now. I'm going to do this ear, so I need to make sure I'm not smudging through the eyes. Right, so the whole of this bit is really dark, coming into the underside of the ear, but remember that top part is light, it's white, so don't go over that, we're just coming down into this really dark area. Okay, that's good. Right, I'll come across and do the same over here, leaving that top part white. It's just as important what you leave as what you do. Okay, that's good. Okay, I think what to do next with the black. I think I'll do a couple of things. So I'm going to come along this line, heading in with some nice deep lines with the black. Do the same over on this side. So whatever we do on one side, basically we want to do on the other. It's a sort of mirror image. Okay, and then we'll do this bit under the eye and come right up to that line underneath the eye there. And the hairs are going more at this kind of angle, so I'm just going to do a few coming down there. We can go over a bit more with the black at the end if we need to. We'll see whether we need to. Okay. Right, I'm going to do now just some lighter strokes with the black. I'm going to hover my hand actually. So if you're feeling confident, you can have your hand held above the picture. And if you're a bit less confident, you can use the paper towel to bring it across. And bring those down to meet our darker ones, but can you see I'm staying within this stripe? And then just some little hairs around the eye itself. Okay, we'll move across here and we'll do the same. So staying within the stripe, can you see the edge of the stripe there? Okay, that's probably all we want to do with the black for now, so I think we're going to leave it. I'm just going to come up slightly into those lines there and there. Okay, that's it for the black. Right, we're going to start to introduce a few other bits of colour into the badger. And this is where I think you can really develop creatively as an artist, when you look and see the colours that are more subtle, and then you can actually exaggerate them in what you're doing. So a lot of people would look at a badger and just think, okay, it's black and white, so I'm going to just do it black and white. But actually, when you look closer, there's quite a few bits of colour. And if anything, you can exaggerate those, and it still looks realistic, but just a lot more interesting than if you just did it black or white. Like if we're going to just do it black and white, then, right, we're done. That's it. It's done now. But actually, you'll see by the end, there's quite a big difference that we'll have made. Okay, we're going to bring a bit of a sort of chocolate brown into just a few of these darker hairs here, and just go over with that chocolate brown. And all the way to the edge. And down. Okay, we're going to do the same over this side. So just a few dashes with that chocolate brown down into these hairs here. Maybe a little bit more down that way. Okay, I'm going to use the same brown just to do a very few up along these lines that kind of divide the cheek from the outer part of the head, and come across and do the same over here. So just a few lines up there, just a very little bit. Okay, it's pretty much it for that, but we're just going to do a little bit coming up above the nose like that, so just a few lines coming up, and then a few bits of brown into the ears. And I think that's it for the brown. Okay, so I'm going to switch out now to a lighter brown, so something like this, whatever you've got that is perhaps close to this. And we're going to do more at the edges down here. So we're just layering up now. We're beginning to really layer up the hairs, get some really more depth into the texture of our badger. Bring those in. Okay. And do the same over this side. So go over some of the black and then head right out to the sides. Come in a little bit more there actually, and just do a few to add a little bit more texture in and underneath this dark area. Okay, right, let's head over here, and I'm going to do some of this brown kind of coming slightly up over the darker hairs that we've done along the back. So just go over your black, but not quite covering the whole area. So we're going to leave some white, and then we're going to be using a couple of other colours to layer into there as well. Okay, something like that. Okay, you can see we're sort of beginning to build up the depth here. Right, I'm going to use the lighter brown just to go over the darker browns and come down to there with that. Do a similar thing over here. Again, pretty much whatever we do on one side, we do on the other. it depends. If you had the light coming from, so with this we've more or less got the light coming from above, but if you had it coming from one side or the other, then you'd perhaps be doing slightly different things with your layering. Okay, I'm going to just do a little bit more down into this area. Just still want to leave it quite clearly defined. Okay. Right, I think that's fine for that colour, so we'll put that back. Right, now slightly bizarrely, we're going to move in with a dark blue. So locate your dark blue, and you often find dark blues and purples in darker shades. So let's say we've got the black here, and often you'll find that there is a little bit of blue mixed in there if you look closely, and when you add it, it just makes it much more interesting. So I'm just going to again add, it's just a little bit more texture, isn't it? We're just building up the texture, and add a little bit more lower down. Move over to this side and do the same. Okay, a very little bit up over these, but not much actually for this particular colour. We're going to do more grey up over the back in a sec. Okay, so the blue especially appears in the stripes heading up each side of the head. So I'm going to now go just basically over the black that we'd already done. And the place you want to be most careful is around the eyes. So we'll go properly around the eyes, but not even over the rings of the eyes just yet. We're going to do something else with those. Okay, so I'm going to continue to just go over the black, but fill in quite a lot of the gaps in the black. Maybe not quite all, so we've still got some highlights essentially, but I'm pretty well filling it in, and you might be able to see I'm still doing my marks in the direction that the hairs go, and that's really important. If you started doing things in that direction, then you suddenly lose that texture that you've spent so much time creating. So keep doing those pastel strokes in the direction that the hairs actually go. Do the same over here. So we're going to cover most of the black, but we'll leave a few little bits white just for some little highlighted hairs. And yeah, as I've maybe said before, you might need to sometimes just twist or flip sides with the pastel to get a more accurate edge again, because it quickly gets blunt, doesn't it? Okay, we're getting there with this. Okay. A bit more up over the eyes there and there. Okay, that's pretty good for the blue. I'm going to just introduce a tiny bit of purple just for interest, and just do a few little hairs, just a few little hints. Purple down to there, and then a few just along this side of the badger. Okay, right, I think we're ready to move in with a bit of light blue, and we'll be alternating a bit between light blue and grey. So for starters, let's just get some little highlights on these stripes with this light blue. So I'm just going to come up over a few of the hairs at the top, do the same over here. And then in under the eye, there's a lighter blue. Okay, that's about right, maybe a little bit down here, a little bit there, and then a little bit of this left-hand side under the badger, the main part of the body. We'll come up Side a bit there. Okay, we're building up the layers pretty well now. Okay, right, I'm also going to use the blue to start to do a few darker areas into the white bands of the badger. So a bit above the nose, and a few strokes kind of just going up through that middle area, and all the way up to sort of level with the eyes. Okay, that will do for that. And then there's another area like that just a bit higher up over where the forehead is. But yeah, most of it's left white. Okay, so a bit more down under the nose. So this is basically the white hairs but slightly more in shadow. So hence they're either blue or grey. But it makes it a bit more interesting to get some blue in there. Okay, we're going to do a few more hairs coming down along that line and outwards. But leaving quite a lot white there. Okay, and same over this side. So kind of along that line and then out from there. Right, we're closing in. At the very end we'll do a little bit more in and around the eye. Right, I'm going to move across to a bit of grey now. I've got the grey. And let's start here. And I'm just going to fill in a bit of that white now with the grey. Okay, I need to switch sides. And come in with some more. And then fill in a little bit of this area with the grey, but not all the way to the top. A little bit of that with the grey, but not all the way to the top. A bit there. Leave some gaps for highlighted hairs. And then we'll leave quite a bit along the back to just show that that's highlighted. Okay, that whole back area is basically done now, in fact. And come in side of the head a little bit more. Okay, that's good. Right, and I'm just trying to think, yeah, we're just going to come in a little bit under like that to add a little bit more depth there. Okay. Right. Sort of similar thing across here. We'll just finish off this lower area. With some of this grey. Okie doke. Right, so I'm going to do a little bit over what I've done at the top here. Just a little bit. Tiny bit more up over the ears. And then down into there and there. Okay. You can pretty much sort of roughly copy what I'm doing, but it doesn't have to be exact because I'm partly making it up as I go along. Right, now I've got to think, what do we need to do around the eyes themselves? Basically we need to be really careful around the eyes because there's the real risk of kind of losing the detail that we've already got in there. But I'm going to use the grey to just very carefully go around part of the eye, but try and leave the eyes themselves untouched by the grey. Okay, that's about right. Okay, very briefly up over the eye. If you've got a peachy kind of colour, we're just going to do a little flick with the peach up over the eyes. Can you see that? So just for those, they're basically eyelids. I've lost the shape of my eye a little bit. So if you lose the shape of something, you can bring the black back out to sort of redefine, reclaim those lines. Okay, I think we're ready for the white, and this should be allowing us to basically finish off the rest of this now. So we're going to start by going up over the top of the nose to give that a nice shine. You can see I've done a little dash kind of down into the middle as well. Okay, that's that. Right, I'm going to go, yeah, and dash out over some of my lines here now to the side, and very much go over the blue and over the grey with some of these big white lines. And the white will just smudge slightly into the grey and blue and just soften it and drag it outwards. Okay, I'm going to do a few lighter hairs coming down there. Okay, that's about right for that side, so we'll do the same, and you can always rub off if you've got some of the sort of black or whatever smudged onto the white, you can try and rub that off. Okay, so we're going to do a similar thing over here. We're going to go over the lighter blue and grey and just soften those colours. Okay, that's good. And then all the way out to the sides. And the white will drag a bit of some of the other colours with it, but that's okay. Okay, let's get the white and just soften some of the blue around the nose. And over the top. And then we especially want to soften and smudge in this bit along the middle stripe on the head. Actually, I'm going to do my white above that and all the way up towards this. I'm going to leave the very top pure white, as in just the paper. Because remember, that's the brightest white. It's almost impossible to get a white brighter than that, because our oil pastel will be more of a sort of smeary white. Okay, come into those areas a little bit. And just overlap a little bit. So I'm doing a few dashes coming into the black stripe now. Just to slightly soften those edges. Okay, so lastly, for this bit, up into the ears, a few little dashes, and then we'll do a few up over the top of the ear as well. We're pretty much there with it now. There's very little still to do. Okay, I think the very last thing that we want to do, I'm just going to get a little bit of white coming down into there, and maybe this side as well. Sorry, I often say very last thing and then I do a couple more things. Okay, that's fine. Right, we're just going to do a very few whiskers. So ideally for this, we want a nice edge to the white, so I'm going to just rub it back down, straight down onto the paper, so that I get rid of all the black and the other colours that are sort of smeared onto it now, and hopefully begin to get a nice defined edge again. Pretty much there, I'll just keep checking it. Yeah, that should do. Okay, so we're going to do, yeah, just a few whiskers coming out, so on this side initially. And then also on this side. Okay. Well, I think that's probably as good as we're going to get them, because Yeah, it's just very difficult to reclaim the white. Okay, right, I think we'll leave that there, call it a day, and really look forward to seeing what you guys have come up with this one. And I've made it a bit more tricky, but I know that you guys, you'll be capable of it. So yeah, have a good go, and yeah, can't wait to see what you've come up with. So best of luck.